Hello and welcome to my presentation of the public history project I've completed during the second year of my History BA. This is part of the public history module, which includes a placement with Cornwall Heritage Trust. The Trust provided us with a few projects which they needed completing. I originally chose to create educational resources aimed at school groups for Cornwall Heritage Trust's newest site, Tregonning Hill. I liked this option because I felt it would be useful for years to come and it would be interesting to convert historical research into accessible resources for children. However, after the first term of this project, I was finding it difficult to travel to the site as well as to do enough research to fill the requirements of this assessment. After meeting with Caroline and Sophie on Teams, I then changed my project to assisting with research for Cornwall Heritage Trust's 40th anniversary exhibition, which will be to the general public. The first step of this was meeting up with Sophie at their office at Crogey in Redruth. She provided me with a project brief. As you can see, the 40th anniversary is going to be celebrated with various events, such as an exhibition at Kernow, a story cafe, tours and crafts. I have been assigned to complete the research for the exhibition, which will be held in the Treasures Gallery in the downstairs zigzag cases, which you can see here. Sophie provided me with 2 pages of potential research topics, which fit into the themes of spiritual/worship, work, live, and play. I decided to conduct research on Gorsedh Kernow and their interaction with the Trust sites, as well as Albert de Castro Glubb, who had a large role in protecting heritage in North Cornwall during the early 20th century. Sophie also told me that the exhibition needed a title. There is the opportunity to continue working with Cornwall Heritage Trust after the end of this placement. The main goal in my research about Albert de Castro Glubb was to find photographs of him and to gather some basic biographical information. I started with a Google search, which took me to Liskeard Old Cornwall Society's Facebook page, who had posted a picture of him. From there, I managed to get in contact with the society, who provided me with another photo which had been digitised. I then decided to conduct a search of Kernows online catalogue and found that there were many examples of correspondence and information about de Castro Glubb. My initial research about the Cornish Gorsedh began in a similar fashion. After making contact with the group, I found that their archive had been donated to Kernow. This is the list of primary sources which I had requested for viewing at Kernow. As you can see, it consisted of a variety of sources about de Castro Glubb and a bundle of materials about the Gorsedh ceremony at Trevivi Coit in 1952. I found the Gorsedh sources very useful because they had a selection of newspapers which demonstrated the public perception of the ceremonies, as well as photographs to visually represent them. However, while still interesting, the sources I had selected for Albert de Castro Glubb were not related to his work in heritage. There was a useful one-page biography about him, which I used as a foundation for further research. Unfortunately, due to it containing confidential information, I could not photograph it. Therefore, after this visit, it became clear I would need to return to Kernow As a result of further correspondence with the bard, I gained access to a list of locations of Gorsedh ceremonies since its revival in 1928. From this, I found out they had also conducted a ceremony in 1930 at the Hurler Stones, another one of the Trust's sites. Here is the list of sources I requested for my second visit. I requested a programme from a more recent bardic ceremony to further my understanding of the proceedings. The primary sources for the Hurler Stones also contained a programme. This means I was able to compare a programme from 1930 to the one in 2004 to see how the ceremonies may have changed. The differences in the programmes were minimal, meaning that modern recordings of the ceremonies, songs and regalia are an active representation of the ceremonies in 1930 and 1952. The Hurlestone selection of sources was more plentiful than the ones for Trevithick Coit, and contained more photographs which were up close to the ceremonies, making them more ideal for display. As I had taken photos of each one of my primary sources, I was able to take my time and closely consider each one. Firstly, I looked at my primary sources for Albert de Castro Glubb. Most of these were excluded from my presentation due to the lack of relevance to heritage work. For example, I had requested a scrapbook made by his grandmother, Margaret Glubb. While this was an interesting cultural source which contained poetry, news articles, and letters, it was unfortunately unrelated to Albert or heritage. In addition, I also viewed letters from Albert. These were from his early career as a bank manager. They also demonstrated how he played an active role in the community by corresponding with the church and many local business owners. However, they originated at least 10 years before his involvement with heritage and his tenure with the Liskeard Old Cornwall Society. When considering my sources for the Cornish Gorsedh, it was a lot easier to choose which to pass on to the Trust. Because of the sources having been previously held in the Gorsedh's own archive, they were more selective as to which sources they kept for researchers. The only primary source I was selective with were the newspaper articles. Due to them being in broadsheet format, many of the articles were extremely long and would likely be less engaging to the public. In addition, due to each one covering the same ceremonies, the articles were repetitive. For example, when researching the Gorsedh at Trevithick Coit, I included a couple of angles of the speech given by Reverend Lane Davies to give a balanced perspective, but I did not keep more than 2 reports of the same aspect of the ceremony. To enhance my research about the Cornish Gorsedh, I used their website, which contained a database of the bards in its history, to identify people in the photographs and articles. I am especially proud of being able to identify who an invitation was addressed to and establish their social status. This told me that the Cornish Gorsedh was an organisation of the upper classes. Through their website, I found a recording of the song Bro Goth Agan to Sow, which I hope can be used in the exhibition. Sorry about that. After discussing with Sophie and Alison over how best to present my primary source research, I created a PowerPoint which displays each source along with some brief analysis. Before each section, included some biographical information on the topic which I gained from secondary sources. I'll just let you have a quick look at that. And then here is some examples of the primary source slides. In addition to this, at the end of the PowerPoint, I added a couple of slides which contained ideas of how information and sources I had gathered could be used in the exhibition. I also came up with some potential titles for the exhibition or events, as the brief had mentioned the need for one. I'll just let you have a quick look at those. Okay, so my research was largely primary source based due to it being local history. However, through the Cornwall Libraries service, I was able to borrow a few books which had site-specific information. While these were not directly cited in my research for the Trust, they gave me a great foundation of knowledge to continue the project. I have also read a selection of articles and chapters to improve my understanding of what public history is and the purpose of local history exhibitions. In addition, as mentioned previously, the Cornish Gorsedh website has been really useful in developing my understanding of the group and its ceremonies. So, when thinking about the challenges I faced during this project, the main one that comes to mind is what was missing from the archive. I found it very surprising that there were significantly less sources about the 1942 Gorsedh at Trevithi Coit than the one in 1930 at the Hurler Stones. Unfortunately, there were no invitations or programs for the Trevithi Coit Gorsedh. This is one of the reasons I compared a modern one from the one in 1930 to make a prediction of the ceremony at Trevithi Coit. In addition, many local history websites and books are quite outdated. Therefore, it was difficult to find information on Castro, Glubb and the sites which he saved, so I largely had to rely on research which the Liskeard Old Cornwall Society had already completed. Overall, these challenges were not major and did not create a significant barrier to my research. In conclusion, I would like to thank the people and organisations who assisted and facilitated my research. Firstly, I would like to thank my sponsors, Caroline and Sophie from Cornwall Heritage Trust. I would also like to thank my supervisor, Alison, who provided me with lots of great advice and teaching. Lastly, I want to thank the team at Kernow, Liskeard Old Cornwall Society and Gorsedh Kernow for their help in finding and providing primary sources. Okay, I will now leave you with my bibliography, which will also be in the description of this video. Thank you for listening.